My aunts crashed Christmas to demand I let their unruly kids into my child-free wedding after their kids ruined my cousin's wedding. Now, they're boycotting and causing chaos. I'm 26, and my partner is 27. We've been together for 5 years, and we're getting married next year. So far, wedding planning had been going pretty well. But now, everything's a mess because of my aunts. For some background, there's a big age gap in my family. On my mother's side, my dad's an only child, and my mom had me when she was in her mid-20s. Meanwhile, my two aunts had kids much later, well into their late 30s. So, I've always been more like an aunt to my cousins, especially since most of them are between 6 and 10 years old. There's about 4 of them, all girls except for my cousin Kate, who's 25, and she's the daughter of my mom's older brother. I do love my family, but let's be honest, my aunts have always been those kinds of parents who can never say no to their kids. And over the years, it's made their kids spoiled. There hasn't been one family event that hasn't been spoiled by one of their kids throwing a tantrum over something ridiculous. Just in the last year, we've had tantrums about not wanting to leave a party, even though the place was closing, not having the right flavor of strawberry ice cream at my grandfather's 85th birthday, and even about getting a pack of hair bows that didn't match. The reasons for these tantrums are so dumb, I swear, they almost sound made up. These kids don't just cry, they scream, pound the floor, and cry so much it feels like they're trying to flood the place until their moms give in. And their dads? They're just pushovers, letting the wives handle everything. It took me a long time to even bring my partner to any family events, just because I knew these tantrums were coming, and I didn't want her to think my family was a nightmare. I work with kids, so I know how kids are supposed to behave, and trust me, this is way beyond normal. I know it's the lack of discipline that's to blame, but I've never really been in a position to say anything because, in my family, if you don't have kids, you're not supposed to have an opinion on how they're raised. And as the kids have gotten older, it's only gotten worse. Now, about the wedding planning, we're not having a huge wedding because neither of us wants that. Between our family and friends, we're keeping it just over 100 people. My partner's family doesn't have any kids under 16, and when we brought up the idea of a child-free wedding, it was clear my partner liked the idea. I was fine with it, too. Our dogs were going to be the ring bearer and flower girl anyway, and we both knew there'd probably be at least one tantrum, and we didn't want to put our friends and family through that. My parents and grandparents agreed with us, so we sent out the invitations. Not long after that, we went to my cousin Kate's wedding. She lives 3 hours away and hasn't really come to family events in years, but her mom made her invite everyone to show off. There were over 400 people there. Don't get me wrong, you could tell a lot of money went into it, and it was lovely, but it's not what I'd want for my own wedding. Kate's new husband had a niece and nephew who were the flower girl and ring bearer. And of course, when that was announced, tantrums broke out. It didn't take long, within 5 minutes of the ceremony, one of the kids was throwing a fit because they wanted to sit closer to the front instead of a few pews back. My partner, after 4 years of attending these events, started keeping track of the tantrums in her phone's notes app. She counted 3 during the ceremony alone. Then, it rained afterward, and the kids didn't want to wear jackets to walk to the car, and more tears followed. The meal wasn't much better, but thankfully we were sitting at the head table with my grandparents, far from the chaos. Still, you couldn't miss the whining and shouting that echoed through the room. Things got worse when 2 of the kids came up to me before dessert and asked why they weren't invited to my wedding, especially since they had been invited to Kate's. I was caught off guard, but I told them the wedding was only for adults. That wasn't the right answer, apparently, because immediately, another tantrum broke out, and they started saying their parents promised they'd be the flower girls at my wedding. Thankfully, they were small for their age, so it was easy to pick them up and move them out of the way. The head table was on a stage, so I took them away from the eyes of others while my parents were confronted by my aunts. My aunts asked why their kids weren't invited. My parents just repeated what I had said, but that wasn't good enough. At that point, my grandfather and I were behind them, trying to calm down 2 of their screaming kids. I don't know what came over me, but I snapped and said, "You really can't see why I might not want your kids at my wedding, can you? Please stop talking about this. Right now's not the time, and people are already staring at us." Then, I just walked away. Let's just say, most of my family agreed with me, but now my aunts are refusing to come to the wedding until I apologize and invite their kids. Some family members think I should have kept quiet and just tried to avoid conflict, but honestly, I don't think what I said was wrong. Considering what I heard about the groom's family after the wedding from Kate and her new husband, I'm even more sure of it. Quick update, I didn't expect this post to get so much attention, but here it is. Christmas came, and it turned into a circus. I had planned to spend Christmas with my partner's family, who live over an hour away, and then come home for Boxing Day with my parents and grandparents. But then, on Christmas night, my mother called to tell me that the Boxing Day celebrations were cancelled. Apparently, the aunts and kids had decided to show up at my great-grandmother's house to confront me about the wedding situation and force me to apologize. They usually do their own thing at Christmas and go to their in-laws, but they figured if they showed up at my great-grandmother's house, I wouldn't refuse to talk to them in front of her. They thought that my great-grandmother, who's 99, would somehow pressure me to give in. But my father told me their faces when they realized I wasn't there were priceless. Obviously, their kids were running wild, screaming, and one of them even threw a tantrum because there were no presents under the tree for them. The aunts arrived hours late, after all the presents were already opened, and apparently, one of the kids couldn't understand that. At one point, my great-grandmother got so fed up with the noise that she ripped out her hearing aids. Nobody had filled her in on what had happened at Kate's wedding, so she was a little confused at first. Once she realized what was going on, she told them to just get over it and enjoy Christmas. My great-grandmother, always with her dark sense of humor, said she wanted to enjoy the likely last wedding she'd ever attend in peace, away from screaming kids. After she said that, my aunts tried to talk about their kids being angels, but no one was buying it. The situation got even worse when the kids got into my grandmother's homemade baked Alaska and ruined it. My grandfather lost it, told them to leave, and said they needed to get their kids' behavior in check if they ever wanted to be invited to another family event. My grandfather, who's a tough guy with over 10 years in the army and 25 years as a police officer, doesn't mess around. When he snapped, they left immediately. My great-grandmother even opened one of her fancy whiskey bottles to celebrate. After all this, my grandfather, who had initially been against disinviting them, gave me the green light to resend their invitations. Originally, I decided to just warn my aunts that if they showed up with their kids, they'd be kicked out. But after a family meeting, we ended up just sending their invitations back and using the money we would have spent on their meals for jewelry for my mom, grandmother, great-grandmother, and me as a memento. My parents and partner are all in favor of this. We're lucky the wedding venue is owned by my soon-to-be in-laws, and security is already included. They've had their share of crazy family stories, so we're in good hands. My maid of honor, who's also my best friend, is ready with a backup plan in case one of my aunts shows up in a white dress. She's prepared to spill red wine on them or use my dogs to accidentally pee on her. She's a drama teacher, so I'm sure she'll make it look like an accident. Regarding the kids guilt-tripping me about the wedding, yes, I knew that's what they were doing. This isn't the first time they've pulled something like this. For example, at one of the kids' Holy Communion, I couldn't make it because I was working, so I made sure to send a card and a gift. When we got to the meal, one of the kids came up to me in front of everyone and asked why I wasn't at the service and where their puppy was. Apparently, my aunt had promised one of my dogs to them. Another tantrum followed, and the puppy they got ended up living with my in-laws. Kate's in-laws were also shocked by the whole situation. We even made a game of guessing when the next tantrum would happen. My partner won when we bet that it would happen just before the speeches. It was all a little dark, but I was too drunk and fed up to care at that point. Lastly, my great-grandmother is a legend. She was the one who set me up with my partner all those years ago. 3 cheers for her and my grandfather, they're the real heroes of this story. Story 2. I found out my wife had been cheating when I stumbled across her profile on an affair website during a vacation. After working myself into the ground for months, I decided to confront her. I used a fake profile to trick her into meeting a stranger at a hotel, where I ambushed her with the truth and a divorce. 7 years ago, my wife and I met at work. She was a few floors below me, and would often bump into each other in the elevator. I thought she was cute, but I was too shy to say much. Then one Saturday, I ran into the office to grab something, and she was there, all alone. We struck up a conversation, and I didn't hesitate to ask her out. Things escalated quickly after that. About a year into our relationship, she found out she was pregnant. It wasn't the best timing, but we didn't see it as a disaster. There was excitement mixed with the fear of the unknown. Now, with our son in the picture, we both love him more than anything, but if we could have waited to have him, we would have. The first few years of our marriage were rocky. We both felt like we were almost forced into it. But even through all that, I never doubted she was the one for me. We loved each other and worked through everything. As we got older, life slowed down a bit. She quit her job to stay home with our son, and I had been working my way up at the office. Then, one of my coworkers passed away suddenly, and the whole office was hit hard. But someone had to pick up their workload, and I took on a massive chunk of it. I spent countless hours at the office, weekends, holidays, you name it. I was exhausted, but I was also pushing hard for a promotion and didn't want to miss any opportunity. Because of all that, my sex life with my wife practically disappeared. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I was too tired to think about anything else. I just wanted to get home, eat, and sleep. And it wasn't for lack of trying on her part. She kept telling me she wanted us to spend more time together, and I promised her we would when I had the time. I'm not blaming her for what happened, but if I had to put some of the blame somewhere, it would be on the fact that I overworked myself. Projects that were supposed to take weeks ended up taking months, and it left me physically worn out. Eventually, I realized I'd worked 22 days in a row without a single day off. So, I talked to my boss about it. He recognized all the work I'd been doing, gave me a generous bonus, and allowed me to take a week off to recharge. I was looking forward to spending time with my family, but when I was finally home with nothing to do, I started noticing things about my wife that seemed off. She had been going to the gym a lot, and I hadn't really noticed the changes in her body until I was on vacation. She'd gotten fitter, got her hair done, and bought a bunch of new clothes. I asked her why she had changed so much, and she got mad at me for not noticing sooner. She told me she just wanted to feel more confident. I tried to reassure her that I thought she was beautiful no matter what, but I also told her she looked great. I had a lot of free time during my break, so I started going over our finances, and that's when I found a charge for a website called Ashley Madison. At first, I thought it was some kind of hair care product, but when I looked it up, I found out it was a website for married people looking to have affairs. My heart sank when I saw that. I knew I hadn't signed up for it, and I realized my wife had paid to use an app that connects married people with others willing to cheat. I needed to know if she was actually having an affair, so I created a fake profile on the website. It didn't take long for me to find her profile. She had photos of herself on there, and anyone who knew her would instantly recognize her. She wasn't even trying to be discreet. In some of the pictures, she was barely wearing anything, clearly showing off her body. Her profile said she was looking for fun because she felt like I was ignoring her. I was devastated and angry at the same time. I couldn't understand why she'd do this, especially when I was working so hard for our future. But when she said she felt ignored, I thought back on all the hours I had spent working and realized she wasn't entirely wrong. Still, that didn't justify what she was doing. I decided to send her a message, posing as a stranger, to see how she'd react. I told her it was a shame that her husband was ignoring her, because she was flawless, and I was sure he didn't know what he was missing. Not long after I sent that message, she replied, and we began exchanging sexual messages. She asked for pictures, and I knew that this wasn't her first conversation on the site. It was clear she had been talking to other men. When she came home from the gym, I acted like I didn't know anything. She hopped in the shower, and I took the chance to go through her phone. I found dozens of messages between her and different men, some of them were even guys I knew. They were parents of our son's friends, neighbors, and even people I worked with. I had no idea that so many people used a website like that, but I guess the world's a lot messier than I thought. One of the guys she had been talking to had said he had fantasized about her for a long time before seeing her on the app. She admitted she felt the same way. It seemed like they'd already met up, and it was clear they planned to again. I also found messages from another guy that suggested she was planning to meet him right away. At that point, I knew I had to catch her in the act. We had married quickly, without a prenuptial agreement, and now I needed evidence. I used my fake profile to bait her. I knew exactly how to talk to her because we'd been married long enough that I knew how to get her to fall for it. Within days, she agreed to meet me at a hotel. She didn't know who I was, but I was amazed she was willing to risk everything for a man she had never met. At the same time, I reached out to the wife of the man she'd been seeing. I told her everything, and she was hysterical. I calmed her down and convinced her that we needed to confront them together. We set up a plan to meet at the same hotel, and I helped her make a fake profile too. The stage was set. The day came, and we arranged for the hotel to give both of them keys. My wife arrived first and texted me to let me know she was waiting in the room, sending me a picture of herself in lingerie. The guy she'd been seeing arrived next, and when he saw her, he was clearly shocked. After they'd been alone for a minute, both his wife and I showed up to confront them. When we walked in, they were silent. My wife grabbed a blanket to cover herself, and they tried to act like we were wrong for catfishing them. But they had no defense. I told my wife I was done with her, that she had broken my heart. She tried to blame me for ignoring her because of work, but I told her that didn't excuse what she had done. Both I and the man's wife filed for divorce soon after. We had plenty of evidence of the affairs. The divorce was messy, but in the end, I came out on top. My wife didn't work, so spousal support was a big issue, but my lawyer got me out of paying anything. I got full custody of our son, with her having visitations, since she had been so easily convinced to meet a stranger online. I felt like I was starting over, but honestly, I'm glad I found out about her true colors before we were 15 years into our marriage.